Welcome to Pastor's Chat today. Well, we're looking at Psalm 4 and verse 1 in particular. David is writing this psalm, we believe, as he has fled from Absalom, his son, who has led an insurrection against him. He crossed the river Jordan, he camped out at Mahanaim, and there he wrote Psalm 3, crying out to the Lord for help and acknowledging that God still sat on his throne. Now he's writing Psalm 4, and maybe it's a few days later, and he again is calling on the Lord just before he goes to bed at night, knowing that God is still sovereign and in charge of the affairs of man, and God will take care of him. Oh my God, help me in the midst of my trials to respond to them the way David did here in chapter 4, verse 1. Listen to what he said. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me or enlarged me when I was in distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. Boy, there's so much in this very first verse. It's a passionate plea, a passionate cry for help. In matter of fact, when he says, hear me when I call, O God, he's basically saying, answer me, O God, as I pray, as I seek your face, as I call on your name. He's desperate for God to give him an answer in the midst of his trial. Remember, David had a priest in his younger days who could help him understand the mind and the will of God, but now he's alone. He has no priest, he has God, and he cries out, "O God of my righteousness." I believe two things there. He acknowledges that God is the righteous God, and he will always do that which is right. But also he acknowledges, remember, David had sinned. David was paying a tremendous price for the sin of adultery with Bathsheba and the sin of murder of her husband. But now he cries and pleads for mercy based on God's righteousness, not his. Oh God, my righteousness. And then he's acknowledging, my righteousness is not my good deeds. God, you are my righteousness. For you and me as Christians today, Christ is our righteousness. We're robed in his righteousness. We have no plea to come to God and say, oh God, I've been so good. I've tried to live right. I've prayed. I've gone to church. I've lived like a good Christian. I didn't do this or that. And Lord, please, because I am so good, help me today. Oh no, my friend. We come for grace, and that's why he says, and have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. And I believe this is important because mercy is God not giving us what we deserve. Grace is God giving us what we don't deserve. And my friend, the grace of God abounds where even sin is. Paul would write later in Romans, and where sin abound, grace did much more abound. Amazing. David seemed to understand that before he ever had the book of Romans. And my friend, because he knew who God was and had a lot of fellowship with God. Well, I want to encourage you today to trust him. Now notice this one last thing here. He says, you have relieved me, or you have enlarged me in my distress. This reminds me of Psalm 119. I believe it's verse 67. The psalmist there said, before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your statutes. And then down just a few verses, in verse 71, the psalmist said, it is good that I've been afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. Now, for most of us, affliction and trials and tribulations seems to pin us down, put us in a place of distress and discouragement, and sometimes even to depression these days. But my friend, David was saying, I am enlarged in the midst of my affliction. God is working in my life. He's helping me to understand his ways in a more perfect way, to follow him, to love him, to worship him, to live for him. Yes, I'm paying for the sins of my past, but God knows I need his grace and I need his mercy. And that's what David is pleading here. Let's read it one more time as we close. Hear me, O God. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have enlarged me in my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. Maybe that's your prayer today. And I want to remind you, God will hear you. We'll look at some more of these verses later tomorrow, but I just trust today you will turn to the Lord in your time of distress and affliction and pain, hurt, sorrow, and know that He is your righteousness and He will help you. God bless, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.